Today's video is probably going to annoy a heck of a lot of the positivity posse out there, but is a very important one to touch on because it relates to what appears to be a declining sentiment when it comes to sports cards on social media. Now, that sounds very vague, but this sort of flows on from some of the discussions that I raised in my live from the other day, and it's sort of brought front of mind once again because some articles have dropped in the last few days that seem to sort of be praising the negativity style of content, and because it's becoming a little bit more mainstream, it's raising a few eyebrows in my mind, on my face, whatever the saying is, that I think we should be a little bit wary of as to what this means for the actual sentiment of collecting cards and paying money for cards. Now, again, that sounds very vague, but that is what we're going to talk to today. Now, like I sort of said, in my live the other day, I talked about a few things that made me feel a little bit uneasy. I mentioned the fact that if you look at social media, and yes, social media is sort of like a microcosm of sports card collecting in general, but what you've sort of seen over the last, I want to say 6 months, is definitely declining views. And it's pretty consistent across, multiple, content creators within YouTube, within Instagram, within other platforms. And it's one of those things that I'm not the only one noticing it. Many, many others have as well. And you've seen quite a few content creators sort of start to leave because, the money is getting harder to make. A lot of these guys are doing this for a living, and you're sort of seeing views decline. And you're sort of seeing this, like I said, with the likes of Sports Card Investor, his views are nowhere near what they used to be. Mojo Sports and a few of these other vloggers now, when their videos drop, you in the past had been getting tens of thousands of views inside the first couple of hours, but now they're only getting a couple of thousand, which is, pretty poor when you think about it in the grand scheme of things. And obviously that in isolation is not anything that we should be drawing a conclusion on, but it's sort of not just there, right? You're seeing it elsewhere, and it's pretty consistent, like I said, across content creation. A lot of people have talked about it. Neo Cards and Comics has talked about it. Dustin, the Sports Card Dad, has talked about it. Most notably, you've seen Sports Card Radio, right? Their live stream from, a few days ago, they've mentioned is the last recurring one they're going to do. They're going to do some here and there when it makes sense, but they're basically going to stop making live streams, stop making videos for the time being because they're seeing opportunities to make money elsewhere. And that's the stuff that Ryan and Colin specifically said themselves in their, most recent live, as well as a few others in the past, as well as comments on social media. But if you sort of take a step back from just their live streams, you've sort of seen them stop making, regular videos as well. The last one I think came out like 6 weeks ago. Could be wrong. Maybe it's longer. But when you looked at the peak, you saw these guys pumping things out left, right, and center. So you're sort of seeing that sentiment change. And then you're also sort of seeing views reduce as well. And again, this is fairly consistent across the industry, apart from the likes of Roth Cards and some of these other people buying views. Because obviously you're seeing these channels grow like crazy when views are down. It's pretty painfully obvious what's going on there. Now, like I said, a lot of people are talking about the fact this sentiment is declining. So what I sort of said in my live stream the other day was that it was pretty interesting. Like, what does that actually mean? Is the economy just catching up now, where you've got less and less people wanting to participate and watch this stuff online? And what does that mean for, long-term card collecting, right? Are we seeing this sentiment decrease because people are also less excited to collect cards in the current economy? Or are we just seeing a decline in social media because people are getting bored of the BAU stuff that people are putting out? So obviously, when I'm seeing these things, it's like pretty hard to make a conclusion, like I said a little bit earlier, but it's just one that's caught my eye over the last 6 or so months. And what I've sort of noticed in conjunction with that is that more and more people have started talking about, negativity, right? The kind of stuff that got my channel to grow so quickly in the likes of Sports Card Radio and AIH Sports. We were sort of seen as like the main watchdogs within this hobby. And I think that sounds really stupid to say. I've always sort of said that watchdogs is a dumb saying. But when, issues were popping up during the peak of positivity, it was our channel sort of calling this stuff out. And you sort of saw others doing the same here and there, but not really consistently. And because the hobby was sort of growing so quickly, you saw a lot of these issues popping up and nobody was really talking about them apart from us, as well as others that I can't think of right now. So we sort of had that, lens placed on us, that category placed on us of being purely haters, being purely negative, being no good for the hobby because we were hating on it all the time, right? And you still see it in the comment section today. But with that in mind, what I've sort of seen over the last 6 months with this decline in viewership is that more and more people have started talking about it, and more people, have started calling out this sort of bad behavior, which is obviously a good thing. But my mind goes to, well, are more and more content creators doing this because they see that's the only way to get views these days, right? They're getting desperate. They're trying to maintain their views, to maintain their sponsors. They're trying to maintain this so they can get that ad revenue and all that kind of jazz, right? Are they doing it for those reasons, or are they doing it because, sentiment is down, and that's the only stuff that people want to watch these days. So they have to do that because, they're no longer getting tens of thousands of views for talking about, flipping a shitty sports card that nobody cares about, right? That's, again, how I'm looking at, that situation. You're sort of seeing views down, and then you're sort of seeing these content creators become more negative to try and get views. It's like, well, are those two things correlated? Are they both linked to the fact that sentiment is down and people are caring less and less about cards? And I want to go one step further with that because I saw an article today, which is essentially what kicked off this conversation. Like I said in the intro, I was sort of talking about this on my live stream the other day, but this is sort of added another piece to the puzzle of the things that I just talked about, right? This sentiment that appears to be declining because Sports Illustrated came out with an article today through their collectibles division that talked through whether or not you should be following the advice of hobby influencers. Now, I'm not sure how detailed this is. This looks very much like it was written by AI, but the reason why I want to reference it is because I was referenced in the article. So was Cage Lawyer, so was AIH Sports, and so was Junk Wax Hero. Even Card Porn was referenced in the article itself. Essentially, what this article is talking to is whether or not you should follow the advice of hobby influencers and why you need to be a bit careful and what basically constitutes a hobby influencer. And it also talks to a few things regarding pumps and dumps and why you need to be careful where you're getting your information from because people are out there with vested interests pushing things in order to get sheep to fall for them to then, provide them with an opportunity to dump cards on people. The bread and butter of what people like myself have talked about for a long time within this industry, right? All these influencers getting paid by this company and then having the option, the platform to go ahead and make things happen to line their own pockets whilst ripping people off. Now, the reason why this is sort of interesting and the reason why I want to talk about it today is because I think it lines up with the things that I just mentioned, right? When you're looking at, negativity, I think it goes to the points that I just mentioned when it came to, YouTube content creators talking about it because that's the only way to get attention these days because, viewers are watching less. It's hard to get attention. This is the only way you could sort of get views to maintain your habit. And the fact that you've now got, articles being written talking about this sort of stuff, and it's not just Sports Illustrated, it's also the likes of Collect talking about this more. You're seeing more and more, traditional platforms within, sports card collecting, even sports card investors talking about this stuff these days. So the fact that it's becoming more, mainstream to do this, what does that actually mean? And I'm keen to get your thoughts on this because when I see it, I see all these things linked together that we've touched on in this video. And yes, I know correlation does not mean causation, but I'm seeing all these little pieces here and there that sort of link up that maybe tell me that sentiment is truly declining. And I'm concerned as to what that actually means for card sales and the like, because you're also seeing more and more people talk about the fact, right? Talk about the fact that card sales are down at shows and things are getting harder to move, etc. And I'm worried, okay, if this sentiment decline is legitimate, like what does that mean for the prices of these cards? And then, you sort of double down on that and you look at some of the, prices of boxes these days. This is a post from Neo Cards and Comics the other day talking about the fact that Bowman Draft, the mega box, is $740 USD for a box of cards. Like that stuff is utterly insane. So you've basically got this really weird sentiment that exists on social media. You've got this really weird, mindset that companies are now, putting out there where they're pricing product basically to the moon because they know breakers are going to buy it. It seems to just be creating this storm of, unsustainability. And the things I sort of talked to in my live stream the other day was, well, if this stuff keeps going the way that it is and sentiment keeps declining and prices keep getting pushed up, who actually wants to collect these cards? Who actually wants to buy this stuff? Who's out there actually paying the big money to keep them in their collections? And I don't think there's as many people out there as what people think. And I know people have pushed back on that in the past, saying there's a heck of a lot of collectors, etc. out there. But, this stuff worries me. And I sort of talked about this in my live stream as well around, the money that's coming in from breakers and then subsequently repackers, right? If that money was to disappear, like they're giving so much liquidity to this hobby, right? Breakers are giving so much liquidity to these companies because they're buying all the product at these price points. You then got people entering these breaks and then having to dump these cards because nobody actually wants them, and then repackers buy them, right? And you go to these shows and you see these shows and you see these vlogs of repackers paying 80 to 90% comps clearing up tables. People can afford to take risks because they know repackers are going to come and buy their tables out. And if all of a sudden the repackers can't really do that anymore because sentiment is down, prices are too high, people don't care about this sort of stuff, and that money leaves, what's going to happen to all these people that are holding all these cards that they've gone and overstretched and completely ruined their risk appetite on? What's going to happen? Have people getting paper hands, people, falling out really quickly, and then all of a sudden, all this money lost and all these people looking to leave the hobby. Now, this is obviously a pretty stark picture that I'm painting, and it's more than likely not true. But when I'm seeing all this sort of stuff, this is what I'm thinking about, and it worries me. Like I said quite a few times now, because I think there is so much artificial liquidity in this hobby. I think there's so much sentiment decline. I think there's so much money being moved around that's not ending up in the hands of collectors, and collectors are not the ones ultimately spending this money. So you're having all these really expensive cards keep getting pushed up, and nobody's actually paying, the 10 grand to get a card to keep in their collection. Or for the most part, that's obviously happening. But for all these cards that are priced at these crazy points, I just don't think it's sustainable. And this is nothing new. This is stuff that we've talked about for many years on the channel. But again, it's one of those ones that I really would like your input on. And I'm probably got a lot of people hating on me in this video. This video probably didn't flow as well as I thought it would have, but I just thought, this was a really good conversation to have. And to sort of touch on what I said in the intro about, content creators in this space becoming a little bit more negative. If you look at Dustin, the sports card dad, his channel has about, 21,000 subscribers, almost 22,000. And he was somebody that's, sponsored by a lot of companies, always talked up as being a somewhat positive dude. He's always given pushback, and I give him a lot of credit for that because not many others would have. But if you look at some of his videos lately, they've been a lot more, negativity focused than what they have been in the past. So does that go to the things I said earlier? And he's not really the only one. Others are doing very similar things. And again, is it because he's trying to maintain his views because views are down across the board? Or is he sort of doing this because this is also the only way to get attention these days, and people are getting desperate and so on and so forth? So I'll let you guys make up your mind on that one specifically, but I just thought that was an interesting, one to call out. So anyway, I completely rambled in this. This video went for way too long, as I do often do. These things are unscripted, guys. I come in with a train of thought and just, brain dump on you all. So I hope you do, appreciate the conversation. But I would really like to hear what you have to say down below, if I'm being perfectly honest. I'm always honest when I say that. I don't know why I just said that. Again, brain is done. But yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. Because like I said, you've got this really weird sentiment decline. You've then got all these companies pushing prices up. It's like, who's actually buying this sort of stuff? You're looking at card shows, and it seems to be people less and less excited. You look at these traditional vloggers, views are down. You've got mainstream, media now from a collectibles perspective, now covering some of this negativity stuff, now referencing me in the AIH Sports. That stuff never happened in the past. It just seems a bit weird to me, guys. So let me know your thoughts down below. I'm really keen as always, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.